Welcome back to Sage Advice. I'm your host, Hamza Khan, and this is the show where we ask life's big questions while we still have time to act on the answers. Today's guest is someone who has taught me and countless others how to live with more courage, more authenticity, more balance, and more brilliance. That's a lot of B's. Bailey Parnell is a visionary leader, a digital well-being pioneer, a powerhouse keynote speaker, and the founder of both SkillsCamp and the Center for Digital Wellbeing. She's also someone that I've had the immense privilege and pleasure of building both a life and businesses with. So I can say with full confidence that her wisdom doesn't just sound good, doesn't just look amazing. It holds up in the real world, both personally, professionally, and academically. In this episode, we're going to follow the thread of her story, the moments that shaped her, the wisdom she's received, and the legacy she hopes to leave behind. Bailey Parnell.
Good to talk to you. Continue the conversation basically from every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this one in particular, I am deeply invested in because I think about how privileged I am to have access to a thinker of your caliber all the time.
Aw.
It's like I have my own Chat GPT plus. You know, I've got like Chat GBP with you, right?
Yeah.
And
Genius.
Genius, powerful
Bailey
thinking.
Parnell,
Genius Bailey
I'll
Parnell.
take it, yeah.
But, you know, something as critical as, hey, I'm working on this keynote and I really just can't figure out this transition over here. I can actually turn to one of the best and brightest minds in the business and receive that feedback instantaneously at a high touch level. And I don't take that for granted. I often think that if I wasn't married to you, if I didn't even know about you, I would actually have to serendipitously find you because you represent an intersection of all of my worlds. You are a leading thinker, you are a thought leader, you're an author, you're an entrepreneur, you straddle academic practitioner like nobody can. I mean, it's like you and Dr. Dina Schaefer are like one and one, Jordan and LeBron. And I'm just so glad that I have both of you in my life and I happen to be married to one of them. It's actually kind of surreal.
Well, I feel the same about you. I think that you are a great thinker. And I think life would be pretty boring if I couldn't go home and talk to people about all these things in my head. So
I'll take it. Thank you. That really means a lot to me. And I mean that not just as your partner, but as somebody that, you know, low key, not even low key, high key, I do look up to you. And I don't know if I say that enough to you. I do think and I do believe with all of my heart that you are probably the most impressive person that I know. I know CEOs who are exceptional at what they do, but they ain't academics, right? They don't got the doctor beside them. And I know exceptional scholars who can't tell a business plan from a receipt. And you are able to, again, harmonize both worlds in a way that allows you to succeed in both like if you only had one of the two, if you only had business powerhouse or you only had academic powerhouse, you would be exceptional in either realm. You're basically something of a unicorn. You're like a rapper who can sing and a singer who can rap. You're like a basketball player who can also play baseball at the highest possible level.
Do you know what? There's blessings and curses to that, though. And I don't know if listeners would be surprised to hear this, because I do feel like a self-assured, confident person in all of those realms. But there's also an expense to all of those realms. Like, I don't think I will ever be the most, like, if you go scholar full hard, you might be a tenured professor. There might be a version of this where you're getting research grants and you're doing that. It's like, I'm never going to do that. I know people who are further along in my head, like down that vertical. And then in the business side, it's like, I don't have a business background. So it's like business for me is like how I exercise the impact on the world and how I reach freedoms.
Yeah.
But I know people further along in that realm. And then I guess whatever the other realms are too, right? Whether it's like personal interest, hobbies. I know, a hobby for us that people will hear is film and television.
Yep.
I know people further along in that realm.
Sure.
So in a way, I definitely like being involved in all of the things. It's like every day is a little bit different and I get to use my brain differently, but you also are very aware that you're not, sometimes you're like, am I maxing out any one of them?
I think you are. And this goes to a book that we have behind us in our bookshelf where we have Dr. Dina Schaefer's books, who was a previous guest. This book is by Miyamoto Musashi. It was written, I think, 10,000 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, by a samurai. And I hope it was 10,000. Maybe it was 1,000. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself over here. When you study the origins of the psychology of leadership, you go as far back as 6 million BC.
Yeah.
So
somewhere between then and now.
Yeah. A long time ago, there was a dude named Miyamoto Musashi who said, if you know the way, you will see it broadly. In other words, how you do one thing is how you do all things. And I have the privilege of watching how you apply yourself in these multiple disciplines. And I think that the way that you act as a CEO, you apply those same dynamics to every aspect of your life. And it's so grounded, the work that you do, and it's so evident. People can see it, they can touch it, they can interact with it. I get to see another side of you. I get to see that in addition to all of these ideas that you're publishing and these businesses and initiatives that you're building, you're also actively engaging with some really abstract ideas that we've covered on Sage Advice. All of the previous guests, we have talked about childhood trauma, attachment styles, the universe, capital U, lowercase u. We've talked about energy exchange, the metaphysical, essentially.
Nice.
And you do that in a way that I think is indistinguishable from your grounded approach to every other discipline in your life, which is why I love talking to you about it. Because when I'm engaging with these ideas like quantum mechanics, for instance, are we star children? And, what happens to consciousness after we pass? And, our souls trying to live out a human experience through every single living being on the planet. These are wild ideas that I love engaging with. And you can not only pick up what I'm putting down, you actually dunk it, you put it between your legs, and then you flip around, and you're just acrobatic with it. You are a one-of-one thinker.
Well,
which is
complimentary.
why I mean this sincerely, which is why I had to think exceptionally hard about what book I want to give you. Not only because it has to challenge you, it has to be something that you want to read, but also it has to be on my bookshelf as well.
I know. I was like, you have to make sure we don't own it yet.
That's it. So I thought long and hard about this. And I hope you like it. And this is my favorite part about Ideas into Action, which was the predecessor to Sage Advice. That's the part I love about it the most, which is being able to hopefully surprise my guests with a book. So in 2021 or 2022, we took a trip to Italy. We went to Barcelona first, and then we went to Italy. And on one of our nights, we stumbled into a bookshop. And the first book that you picked up changed not only my life, I believe it changed our lives. Do you remember the name of that book?
All About Love?
All About
Bell
Love
Hooks.
by Bell Hooks.
Yeah.
And in that book,
that's funny.
Bell Hooks introduced a definition of leadership, love. Interesting Freudian slip, right? Because love and leadership, if you ask me, I think that they stem from the same well, love. Love is love. And she said that love is I think you know this probably better than I do. It's the ability to extend oneself for the spiritual development of another.
Yes. And so I'm clear on my definition of love in part because of that. And she's also clear that the spiritual development does not mean religious education.
Exactly.
That is like mind, body, them becoming the most realized version of themselves and contributing to that.
That's it. And so she wrote twin books, one about the male experience and one about the female experience. Mr. Bezos could not come through in time for me to have both books available, but I did bring one of them for you, and I promise I will give you the other one. This is The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love.
Oh, man,
and this is for you, my friend.
Oh, love you.
My best friend. And the other one is coming, and it is essentially a companion book to this that speaks about the female experience.
Fun.
Why did I offer you twin books, one about a boy, one about a girl?
This is a good choice. I think this is a very fitting choice. Yeah, go ahead.
After you, my friend.
Well, if everyone has not heard this from us directly yet, Hamza and I are expecting twins in a few months.
Crazy. Crazy. Sign from the universe itself to always choose hope, always choose love. Especially after the back-to-back losses last year.
Yeah.
It's surreal that we have the opportunity to bring into the world a boy and a girl.
Yeah, and we had double losses last year, which coincidentally, this wasn't planned, but we had talked about that a little bit on my podcast.
Yes.
And everybody was it was so interesting to see the repercussions of sharing, because I guess sharing is kind of a state for us. Like, we're used to it with speaking and writing and to express ourselves. But you know, and I know that stories came back and people in our own lives who we know better than anyone had shared what was going on with them.
Right.
And sending their, love, prayers, duas, good vibes.
Yeah.
And so I think it worked because now we have a double rainbow.
A double rainbow. And it's so surreal that we're going to get to experience very shortly the, knock on wood, we pray that everything goes well, the full human experience seen through two very different, when I say very different, I want to be careful. I mean, like I would say in the grand scheme of things, slight differences, namely external genitalia, right? and like, of course, when you get really into the biology of this, different kinds of secretions and ways of being, so on and so forth. But this goes into a conversation I was having last night with my dad, who said, it's very interesting. And he said this earnestly. He's like, do you think that men make better leaders than women? And I was like,
did he ask last night?
I was like, Pops, let me slow you down right there. Let me talk to you now as Hamza Khan, globally renowned expert on the psychology of leadership.
Yeah.
Let me break this down. Let me talk to you about the great man theory and how the system is designed to prevent the great experiment known as female leadership from taking hold. And
like, I've been preparing for this question from you for a very long time.
Exactly. And I was able to make some progress there. And, I walked away from that interaction thinking, yeah, the system is still largely stacked against women succeeding. You can call it the patriarchy, you can call it systemic oppression. It's just reflected in the metadata. It's everything from pay discrepancy to there being more CEOs on the Fortune 500 list named John, Jeff, and Michael than there are women. True story. So my reason for giving this book to you, and the other one, is that I want to do everything in my power with you to ensure that we can make these kids as free as possible, to explore their lives, to grow, to thrive, and to, as Dina said in the last episode, to move in the direction of aliveness. And why it was so important for me to talk to you, not just as somebody who I'm deeply fascinated by as my partner as well, but I think you are probably the most free person in my life. Your parents, both of them, right, both sets, your mom, dad, stepfather, stepmother, have raised you in such a way where when I came into your orbit, you were already so self-actualized, so free. And I think that has continued. I don't know of anybody else who's actually is genuinely happy, mostly trauma-free than you. You are such a light. And I have so many questions for you, and I want to structure them in the same way that I've structured the last couple of conversations around this idea of sage advice. Advice you've received, advice that you're engaging with, and advice that you want to leave behind.
Yes. And gosh, though, I'm glad that you see it that way. And there are definitely ways I've grown to see how my circumstances growing up led to certain kinds of freedoms. But I wonder if people hearing that, how they would classify freedom and how they would classify trauma. Right. So freedoms did not come in the form of classic forms, right? It wasn't financially free. I didn't have temporal freedom.
Yep.
I didn't have things that I'm striving for now, but I was free in a different way in terms of self-actualization, encouraged in a different way.
So let's talk about it. Let's begin the narrative journey of Bailey Parnell, the Odyssey of BP. So once upon a time, there was Bailey. And whatever comes to mind, if you're picturing yourself as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, 5 minutes ago, you get to decide. Once upon a time, there was Bailey. And every day, Bailey did Bailey things until one day. Take us to that until one day.
Well, let's see. I think I feel like I've always been on not a straight track, but I've always been this person. Like, I don't think I myself have dramatically deviated from the Bailey that teachers would have known in grade 6. I really don't think so. But then again, okay, also, this might be funny for people to hear, because I moved out, grew up in Brampton, and I moved to Toronto at 17 for school. And I think maybe my one day was like meeting you.
Seriously?
Well, people might find that hard to believe, given that I am an independent woman who has
Facts.
a lot going on for myself outside of my marriage.
You're an
I'd
alien
like to
of
think.
extraordinary
But
beauty, literally.
but actually, people want to also know that I actually met you when I was 18.
That's crazy, man.
We didn't get together until later, like early 20s. But when I met you in that first context, aw, cute. So when I actually met you in that first context, I thought you were cute, but also we were like professional colleagues.
Sure.
So everybody, Hamza and I actually worked together for years before we were together.
Yeah.
And we even started a business kind of alongside like SkillsCamp.
Right.
So, but meeting you was, and working alongside you, and also Leslie D'Souza.
Hey, shout out to Leslie D.
So maybe I'm lucky this happened so early, actually. Because two things happened, I guess. I was in media and television, and I thought I wanted to do foreign news reporting, and I was still in that program, which is called media production at Toronto Metropolitan University, as you know. But then I took a summer job, and I honestly just needed to make money to pay for school, and I was trying to find something that would be kind of in the field. And so I had applied for a job with the university, and it was the job that I applied for was full-time orientation media, like creating the media products for orientation, if you remember the O team.
Yeah, O team.
So it's basically, it was a student-led team of full-timers in the summer that plan the orientation for the incoming students.
Yep.
I know you know this, but for listeners, you might not. I actually applied for the media role, and I applied for the marketing role. They were separate roles. What Leslie D'Souza offered me was event planning role.
Right.
So clearly she saw something in me, which now is funny because it's the same role as a producer on set, which is the same role as a CEO in a business, right? So she obviously saw something.
Skills,
Very much so, yeah. And she offered me that role. But because I did the event planning, it was myself and Emma Brazier, if you remember.
Emma Bees. Wow.
Call back, right? So we were, because we had that role, we were actually meeting with everyone on campus. We were part of every part of the event. And that's where I really got to learn about other ways of being. And meeting you was, in a way, the until one day, because you actually had a full-time role back then that was, you did a lot of public speaking.
Yep.
And you also did social marketing.
That's so interesting.
And then social marketing became, like, social media became the thing where I was like, oh, you can do that? And in many ways, I was like, you can do that. Like, social media was still very new, as we remember. We were still talking, like, how can we take Facebook and Twitter and, like, how can we actually use this for good? How can we engage students in their education? And I was there thinking, wait, this is it. This is the future. I don't think it's actually the news TV that I've been doing. And I want to be a part of that. But then the other thing that you did was you were a public speaker.
Yeah.
And you got paid. And I know back then it may have been like $100 or something.
Parking tickets.
Yeah, exactly, right? But I was like, you can do that? Again, I thought, being in front of TV was how you got your ideas out there. And my family is in a very, very different space than I do. They didn't do higher education in the same way, or at all. So it was like new. I'm like, you can just stand on stage and tell people your ideas and they will pay you for it. And then I'm like, wait, all of you just stayed in education? Like, nobody grows up saying they want to work in student affairs. Like, they don't even know what student affairs is, right? So then I was like, you all just stayed learning and you get paid to do it and you just learn and teach.
Live on campus, this is great.
So now that I'm thinking it out loud and saying it out loud, the until one day was probably getting that role that was different, in a different space.
Yeah.
Being introduced to you, to social media, and obviously being introduced to you, the major until one days. Y'all, when I look back now, it seems strange, but because you're my husband, but like, I guess you've actually been a part of like my entire adult life, which is so weird. Because I felt very mature then, and I think everyone would have said that I was then.
100%.
And now, but when I just calculate numbers, I'm like, oh yeah, I've literally known you my entire adult life. Weird.
Yeah, you've always had 65-year-old energy.
I feel this way. Like, My parents would joke about it too. They're like, you were 9 going on 70.
Yeah.
But still, I like to have fun.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with me. And what a blast from the past to rehash those memories, to experience working beside Leslie D'Souza, to meet Emma Bees. And I think Chris Tung was on that team as well, Stephen Kassem. Wild times, man. You met me at a very interesting time in my life because I had transitioned out of the startup world. I was at the University of Toronto, Scarborough after this is not my show, but I'll quickly give you like a quick run through of how our worlds overlapped. So I was happy-go-lucky working with my friends, NBP. We were making music videos, and I thought
Oh, I know.
that
I've seen them.
that we got to be free content creators.
There's something.
There's another version of me that's out there right now, making content, making music videos, making short films. That's not the version of me that's here right now. That version of me lives somewhere else in the quantum realm. What happened is that everybody started going to school, and I'm like, I guess I got to go to school too. And then I went to the University of Toronto, Scarborough, and I was a completely dejected, disillusioned student. And what was able to bring back some joy into my life was crossing paths with Alan Grant, Drew Dudley, and Lisa Arneson, the trifecta of sages that very much inspired this show. And they were able to activate my gifts again and make me think about leadership at a very low resolution level. At that time, I didn't really think of myself as a leader, but I was immersed around leadership energy and leadership discourse and ideas. Then I go into the world of startups and I realize what bad leadership looks like. And I'm like, something's wrong here. I'm losing my light again. Lisa helped me. And Lisa said, go talk to this guy, Kareem, another sage, and go see what's happening at Ryerson. And Kareem was transitioning out of digital community.
I remember you.
And he's like, come on in. And so like, that was a bit of a life raft for me. I'm like, I'm just going to get back on and try to pick up from where I left off at the University of Toronto, Scarborough. And I joined initially in the capacity of digital community facilitator. And I'm like, what is this role?
Yeah.
I'm like, I guess it's like full service agency. I get to do web, video, photography, and I just have to find ways to create content to live on these burgeoning platforms. And I was good at it. I was having fun, but it still wasn't my thing. I was like, I don't know if I'm a marketer. I don't know if I'm a designer, photographer, videographer. And so when I met you, I was going through an identity shift as well. And that was, how do I do the thing I'm actually trying to do? Which is to get back to expression, which is to get back to content creation for things that I love. I'm happy to tell other people's stories, but like, I got to tell my own story. And so you met me as I was leading with all of, the things that I was being paid to do full time, but I was blending that into the audiences that wanted me to share my process and my philosophies on productivity, resilience, and eventually leadership. So full circle moment, man.
Well, it is kind of funny that,
Full circle.
it's a full circle moment because before we were together in the romantic love kind of way, we had, friendship love. Have you talked to your audiences yet about the different kinds of love?
Not yet,
because that must be coming.
Big part of the next book, just saying.
I betcha. So, but your approach to productivity and peak performance strategies actually started very early.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't know you the before version. So I just met the version who was really into that stuff. And so I just learned it from you. And at some point when we were collaborating together on the same team, then I just didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
So even things like, I don't know, task management or productivity strategies or even using
OKRs,
systems.
AORs, right? Just like
all
the
this
shorthand
stuff.
ways of organizing the chaos of the world.
Which at the time, I didn't know any other way of being because now I look back and I was like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Like it was pretty early days. So that could be another reason why you are also part of the until one day. Until one day, you learned that you can treat your life like you could be the CEO of your life.
Yeah.
What do you want to accomplish?
Man,
and how are you going to do it?
Thank you. I was not expecting for you to say that. I thought, knowing you, what your until one day was going to be, I thought it was possibly going to be the loss of Bridget, who we love and we miss, who's with us right now in spirit.
Well, I thought about that at first, but then I thought actually when I think about a film or something and we have like a classic narrative arc and I think about the until one day is like things were a way before and they were very different afterwards and the main characters got to respond and do things differently. And my mom passing was a major peak in the narrative arcs, but it was expected. She very well, I could teach lessons on how she prepared her daughters for that to happen in a graceful loving way,
Shit,
oddly.
keynote idea. Just saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also, I have a pretty clear relationship with grief and also a pretty clear understanding of how to deal with grief. So there's absolutely grieving. Grieving, it's just like a part of you, you're a different person. But that person was not, but I guess in a way I was still here going like this major grief, but still like that afterwards. Whereas like I see the early start of my time in university, or like that time of my life after my first year of university, that program, being introduced to a new career set, being introduced to new people, seeing that there's different ways to live and learn, and that you can stay, like that actually was like, oh, there's a version of Bailey that maybe was doing, I don't know, producing for news right now. Like some of my friends really are.
They are.
And then there's a version that's like, oh wait, there's this other, that thing that social media led to digital well-being, led to AI, led to soft skills development. Yeah. My work in student affairs led to leadership development, like all of it, right?
So interesting. I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about the difference between an athlete and I think they were talking about specifically LeBron James. They're like, is LeBron James an athlete or a basketball player? And the consensus was he's an athlete, which means that he would be successful in every sport you put him into. He's not a basketball player. You can drop LeBron James into swimming. He'd be the best swimmer. You could drop him into tennis. He'd be the best tennis player. And I think that's true of you too. I think that with your mindset, I mean that, and with your driving force, which was indomitable when I met you. Like, I just remember being like, holy smokes, like you add Bailey to any equation on a team, shit's going to get done. Like it was actually frustrating for me when there was an element during the regime change of Toronto Metropolitan University that said, Bailey and Hamza can't work together anymore. And that was probably the beginning of the end for me. Right. I'm like, you are actually asking me to do this work with both hands tied behind my back. You don't actually know that Bailey is the reason why this is succeeding.
Oh, that's nice.
And
but
I
then,
mean that sincerely.
But thank goodness, because that led to going out on your own, and we got married, everybody. Obviously, you can tell. So obviously that worked out. Yeah. And
how you like them apples? Right.
I mean, that all was obviously meant to be the way that it was. But
it was.
That's nice that you think that about me.
My point.
I think that I would not be successful in every realm, but that I would certainly be able to find the people and coach them to be for me and with me.
You're being very humble, but I've seen this firsthand. I've seen you enter into different realms. You're now one of the co-founders and the head of learning and AI at an AI startup that we've co-founded. Mm-hmm. And you are acting in ways that I think are more befitting of the CEO title than the co-CEOs. And I happen to be one of them. So I think that you are Bailey. Like, it's one of one. I've never met anyone like you, truly. Aww. And I think that everybody who meets you knows that. Why this is important for me is because, sure, I happen to be an inciting force in your life, and I'm very grateful to have played that role. I'm on a journey right now, and I've been on a journey for the last 10 years. I exited a hero's journey. I think I'm like completing like the last 15 minutes of that movie, and I'm transitioning into a new movie. And this new movie is requiring me to find ways to distill the wisdom of the ages into directions, into sort of bite-sized, either heuristics, symbols, just concise units that can help people navigate this time of complexity, ambiguity, uncertainty, and volatility. I just said VUCA backwards. And so I need your help.
Same stuff.
And I want to learn from you. I actually want to understand how you're able to take the universe and make meaning of it in some simple ways that I think are resonant across time. And so I have 3 questions for you. The first question is, what is the wisest piece of advice you have ever received?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know. Like we talk about this stuff on the regular, but I couldn't pinpoint one thing. So I was trying to think of advice that I live by that has come back in many forms throughout the entire narrative.
This is what I want.
Yeah. And so I think the best piece of advice that I've received from many sages, I've heard in 5 different ways. So I'm going to give you all of them.
Sure.
And I live this way. Probably the most important would be act and live from the place of the goal. So this is one way I've heard this exact same message, which is, who do you want to be? What are the things you want to accomplish? How does that person act? And then just do that now.
Act as if, essentially.
So another way I've heard this from Molly Bloom, when it was called Act As If.
Like Molly's game, Molly Bloom?
Yeah.
Right on,
No,
man.
actually.
Shout out to fellow speakers.
In her keynote. Yeah.
Great movie, too.
And another one, my coach says, act from the place of the goal. Molly Bloom says, act as if. When I was, in high school, people were saying, dress for the job that you want. I've heard it said, like, it's basically this exact same piece of advice is who do you want to be? How do they act? And just be that person now.
Yeah.
Another one is don't fake it till you make it, fake it till you become it. Why is this the same piece of advice? Because the advice is, and this actually works with brain psychology, is that if you act in a certain way, it won't be fake forever.
Right.
It won't be. If you pretend to be confident and you act in the way that confident people act, which is Amy Cuddy's research on things like power poses, it will actually change the way that people respond to you, which will actually inform how you see yourself, and it becomes real confidence. So there's a lot in many different disciplines to cover this same piece of advice. Some people call it, they would call it goal setting that works with our psychology. They would call it self-aware, call it peak performance strategy. We would work with athletes on this. We would work with CEOs on this. And guess what? Half of my world is calling it manifestation. They would not say manifestation.
I was going to say, yeah,
in the spiritual realm, they'd be calling it something else. But everyone is giving the same piece of advice. And I think it's something that I try to live by every single day.
If I may offer something for you, find a way to make it your own, because I like that you're quoting Molly Bloom, Hamza Khan, Amy Cuddy. I've heard all of these things. They're said a lot in our household. Yesterday, I put my own stamp on it too. I was speaking to the small business centers of Ontario, and I'm like, how do I present this idea in a way that's novel, that they understand? And I said, when you're advising your entrepreneurs, begin with the exit. That's what I said. So think literally about a business exiting and then begin with the exit.
And another one you say,
like, oh shit, that's good. And I'm like, oh damn, okay, I'm taking that one.
Well, it makes sense, and things might change along the way. But another thing that you've said, or that I would consider the exact same piece of advice, is when you say, write your eulogy.
Yeah, and reverse engineer success.
I don't know if you've covered that. I don't know if you've covered that on this podcast, but Hamza will say, like, when you're thinking about your life, write your eulogy. And what you're actually saying is, like, what do you want to be said about you when this thing is said and done? And I think it's the same advice. Act that person. Just do that now. That's how you get described that way. We would teach in a SkillsCamp program, in a leadership, like early talent or high potential program. We would be saying, these are leaders, how leaders conduct themselves. Good leaders, if you want effective outcomes that are, human-centric, productive, high performance, this is what they would do. But you need to do it now. I don't care if you have the title yet. How do you think you get the title?
How do you
You'd
think
be
you get the
behaving like a
title?
leader now. And so it's the same piece of advice. And I guess I could find, and everyone should find their spin on it. That's exactly what you pay a thought leader for, is their perspective on an idea. So
That's
maybe
it.
I should.
Well said. And I'm going to challenge you to do that. And
Sure. Talk about it over dinner.
No, you should really put your stamp on it, because I think that more than, the people that you referenced over here, I think you're actively manifesting that. Maybe second only to Hina, I must say, right? Like everybody's
Who's my peak performance coach.
There you go. And like Hina's really getting after it. But like, Molly, Amy, I'm familiar with them. They're brilliant in their own right. But I think that you are expressing that idea in ways that maybe they even look up to, frankly, because you're still getting after it in some arenas that are out of reach for most people, including myself. So it's just really cool to hear this coming from you. It's very validating, and I hope that it galvanizes the audience to get after their own goals. From a psychology perspective, the reason why people are afraid to do this is because if you're contending with the goal, if you're contending with the job that you want, if you're contending with the it you will become, if you're contending with your eulogy, you are subconsciously engaging with death. And
death anxiety.
It seems like a stretch.
Oh, don't get Hamza going on death anxiety, toxic traits, and all this stuff.
At some point, we're bringing in Ernest Becker and Sheldon Solomon in here. And like, Sheldon, open an invitation, come in wearing the shorts that you do. Dude, Sheldon Solomon delivers keynotes in shorts.
Flex.
That is
I love it.
punk, man. Like, if we can get him to Mothership, sorry, I said it. If we can get him to Mothership, I would be very happy.
Yeah.
Anyways, the reason why people are afraid to engage with that is because then they have to imagine what's going to happen when the current track that they're on ends. And in the ancestral environment, the end of something typically meant death. And so we as human beings 10,000 years later have to learn how to override that loss aversion bias and see that the gain is either equally weighed with the death loss or will produce more whatever than the loss of death. So
there's a lot of reasons people don't want to engage with it. And it's amazing. I've seen it happen, whether it was, other people who are in my group for the coaching group, but sometimes when we're doing that same advice and having people envision a version of them like as a leader or something in the SkillsCamp program, it's like there's a lot of fear.
Yeah.
And there's so many psychological barriers that get in the way that come from all parts of life about my coach does this one exercise. So I feel like,
break it down.
It's okay, I will give her credit. It is Hamza Khan. Yeah. And, I remember one of the things that got me into her coaching, actually, like this was a free masterclass. It was years ago now. And she had us come up with like what we wanted to make, I think, in a year. Like just literally just writing it down. And it was like double what you make right now, and then triple it, and then quadruple it. And everyone had a moment, including myself, where they felt uncomfortable putting it down on paper.
Yeah.
No, it was like fear took over or something. It's like, oh, but I can't do, no, like that's not going to work. Or
how
suddenly,
am I going to make
all of these things? It's like you couldn't even imagine it for yourself without the psychological discomfort. So then the counter to that is that your ego pops up,
right?
Which would be
defense.
An ego would be a defense against that stuff. And so ego is like, well, there's other reasons that I wouldn't be able to do that, or like I can't. I'm not going to put it down. I'm going to waste my time and all this stuff, right? So there's really a lot of things that come up for people for why they can't. They don't want to engage with the best or the. When we say goals, it also means like how you want to feel, like a goal about how you want to feel in life or whatever that goal is, right?
We'll have to cover this in another episode, which is like, my theory is it's inspired by Dr. Stephen A. Hopfall, who talks about the conservation of resources and how every feeling of fear is tied to loss, either net loss, threat of a loss, or insufficient reward following a gain. But that's another conversation for another time. I love that you are encouraging us to act from the place of the goal, to act as if, dress for the job you want, fake it until you become it, write your eulogy, set that North Star, and then work backwards, right? Yeah. That is beautiful. And you are living proof of that sage advice. I'm curious to know now, is there any advice that you're engaging with in the present moment that feels true, but hasn't quite settled yet for whatever reason?
Well, when I hear that, I think about like advice that I hear a lot of people agree with, but I don't think I agree with.
Say it.
And I used to. So I guess I've changed a little bit.
Sure.
And the advice was, and maybe I'm just thinking because of recency bias, I talked about it yesterday with someone. And we were talking about the quote, plan for the worst and you'll be okay.
Was I on this call?
Maybe. Yeah. Was it? Like expect the worst.
It's a sage call, right?
Was it?
Yeah.
When was we talking about this?
Yeah, it was on the sage call.
So this might be why I'm thinking about this. But the advice that people say is like, let's expect the worst and hope for the best. I actually don't operate that way.
Tell me more.
It doesn't resonate with me anymore.
But it feels true though.
It's like it feels true, right? Because I used to operate that way, which is like, it almost is like, all right, a good planner would, think about all risks. I literally just gave a talk today on like risks of AI, but it ends with, I say to them, I don't operate from that place. The opposite is going to sound wild to some people. Another one that was very true in the people I spend time with in that coaching group is, what if you operated from a place of the best? I expect the best. And what would happen? And so I don't plan for the worst. I actually plan for the best. I actually plan as if everything is working out for me, which is a phrase that, you hear me say a lot, and you hear, my colleagues say a lot, which is, everything's always working out for me. And what if I just operated from then and from there? And I guess this, as I'm saying this out loud, does kind of connect with that, like act from the place of the goal thing we're talking about, because it's like, if I'm acting from the place of the goal, I cannot possibly be planning for the worst. And then what? Like,
This is very interesting. Yeah. With Hina and your crew, have you covered the concept of adjacent possible yet?
I don't think so, but
Let me hook this up to you. Like I'm literally just
it's possible
exploring
that
it.
she has her own take on it.
Maybe she does. And so like I'll read this to you very quickly. This is from Stephen Johnson. The adjacent possible theory proposes that at any given moment, there is a finite set of possibilities for a system's evolution based on its current state and available resources. And that innovation happens not through large leaps, but through incremental steps. An incremental step in one direction opens up all kinds of possibilities. So how does this tie in?
Right.
If you expect the best, you're actually opening up possibilities in the direction of the best. But if you hope for the best, you're opening possibilities in that direction. But if you expect the worst, even if you're doing that as sort of like a buttress against loss, you're still opening up possibilities in that direction.
I see that. Okay, so I think what I'm getting is like from what the adjacent possibility theory is, the part I didn't first resonate with was when you said that there were finite possibilities.
There were finite
Is
possibilities
that what he's saying?
to begin with in a system.
Right.
And
I
then
see.
you only start to see the infinite possibilities once you start moving in a direction.
Well, I do like that.
So basic quantum computing.
Well, I do like that because I like that because another kind of law, it's weird, like all these laws we govern ourselves by, but a law I would govern myself by is that sometimes you just have to take the first step.
Yeah.
And I would call this like when you're acting from the place of the goal, or that act as if that advice, which I really should guess. I'll find my own phrase for it. Right. But it's sometimes I don't know I don't know every step.
Yeah.
This is the part that freaks people out, right? It's like, I'm going to get a doctorate. I will have a doctorate. And then sometimes it freaks people out when I say, well, I'm supposed to graduate by the end of the year, but who knows? Maybe I'm going to have to add a trimester or something. Yeah. Maybe I will. But to me, it's like the I will get a doctorate or something. I will do X, or I will be someone that is happy in my marriage, is like, I don't even entertain any other possibility. Right. So then, but I don't always know the how. Yeah. So I see it like if I take the first step, which would align with this theory, that new possibilities open up, and that one of those possibilities I literally could not have seen it from the vantage point I was at before.
Brilliant.
Which means you have to take this step, and that's the part that freaks out a lot of people that we work with in our programs, because it's like, oh, but I've been there too, I'm not qualified yet, like I don't have this background. Should we be starting an AI startup? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, just start, just do one thing, just have one conversation and see how that changes the possibilities of perspective.
I love this. This is a full circle moment. And so like the last episode we had was with Dr. Dina Schaefer. Love Dina. The gift that I gave her was Green Lads by Matthew McConaughey.
I haven't read it, but I think you gave it to my dad too.
I did. I was like, I give it to the punks in my life. And I briefly alluded to it, Interstellar being one of my favorite movies. The adjacent possible theory resonates with me so deeply because it gives me the language to express the scene that's the most confusing to people, which is the Tesseract at the end. The fifth dimensional beings construct this space of infinite possibility, quantum states in every direction, but they don't actually know what Cooper wants. And Cooper just wants to get with his daughter. So they drop him in there and they're like, sir, we don't know what you want. Can you figure this out? Free will. And so the adjacent possible theory starts working when he applies himself in the direction of the goal. And the whole movie is just about a father trying to reconnect with his daughter. He made his daughter Murph a promise. He's like, Murph, I'm not going to leave you. Stay. And in that movie, he's like, I need to find my way to my daughter. I'm going to do everything in my power to do that. And so the adjacent possible theory is this. If I want to give this glass of water to you, I have to focus on giving you the glass of water. Now, how can I give it to you? There's an infinite amount of ways in this direction that a finite amount of ways I can give it to you in this direction.
If you are giving it to me.
Right.
But
I can give it to you with my right hand, my left hand, I can slide it, I can roll it. But what the adjacent possible theory is, if I entertain the possibility of moving in the other direction, bringing it back, I equally create as many possibilities in this direction, and that's counterproductive.
I would coach you further. I would say your goal is not to pass me the water. Your goal is that I am hydrated.
Interesting. And then the universe bends itself to meet that goal.
Right. So I would be acting from the place of Bailey's hydrated. And then then I just say that to you, and
Right.
I can think of 7 million possibilities that did not include you passing me water.
Right.
Someone else gets it. We create a crane that gives me water.
Sure.
I reach out and grab the cup that's literally in front of me, right?
Right.
So my point is that if you attach yourself to that outcome, there's already more possibilities.
I hear what you're saying. And I think that for the sake of ease, I used giving you the glass as the goal. But
Yeah.
you're saying that if the goal was to keep you hydrated, which I think is ultimately the goal of giving you the glass, same idea. Just like pick the direction, express
Right.
the love
Right, I see.
across space and time, and apply yourself in that direction.
And like anything, and then this theory, it's saying anything that keeps me dehydrated or less hydrated would be opening up possibilities in the other way.
Yeah, and why would you expect the worst? Why would you introduce unnecessary complexity to the system? Why would you hedge your bets? Why would you try to de-risk when you should be using all your time, energy, and attention to hope for the best?
Like imagine that. Imagine we put all of this brain power that we have towards the solution or towards the outcome that we all want. And then when you get teams together, that's where you really get the power of the collective and also things like diversity in the collective, because we're all attached to the same outcome, not the output. And then it's like, whoa. And then you add AI, whoo, we've got all these possibilities that come up.
Look, maybe this is where I show my cards a little bit and I reveal some of my political leanings. But I feel safe to talk to you about this.
Well, it's me, yeah.
Because
I would imagine
one of the things I
listeners.
left out of the bio is that you actually have the heart of an activist, unlike anybody else that I've met. And it's actually remarkable that you're able to operate in every space and hold compassion for every group of people, even people who have views that you fundamentally disagree with. I think that you and I were able to quickly arrive at the conclusion that people who were advocating for this notion of defund the police, we understood what they were trying to say when they said defund the police. Their goal was ultimately safety and security for everybody. But the language that they used was take money away from the police. But I think that you added a very interesting take to that in our conversation, which is reallocate some of the money being overspent on protecting and use that to invest in the ultimate goal. We're getting too caught up on the mechanism and we're not focused on the outcome. The outcome, police, lawmakers, and activists have the same goal, which is safety and security for the community. We're saying defund the police as a way to sort of escalate the volume of the discussion so that people are shaken out of their patterns of opening up possibilities in the other direction. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, then you add everything we're talking about is the outcome, but then you have to add sociology, language, and how people receive it, media. But I have seen now a few movements, and I think this is just with age and study, like looking back and living. I've seen a few movements where I watched the development of the movement and I saw how it changed. Like where something like that, probably everyone would agree with. Yeah. Reallocate some of the money, especially, where we are in the US, it's like to mental health services, because look how much of their time is spent on this. They're not equipped with this. It's better
social
for
determinants.
Better for community, better for
facts,
better for the cops, better for everyone, right? And so then, but then when all you hear is like something like a short phrase, it simplifies something that is not simple. And but then it changes over time. So, and activists, I think, know better than anyone that language matters. So, even phrases like diversity, equity, inclusion, are phrases that are causing different outcomes, especially in the States right now, than they did 5 years ago, than they did 10 years ago. But language matters, language morphs. And so people in that space too are also contending with how should we change language to get the outcome that we want. And the outcome is really that a space is set for people to belong and to thrive, right? Which most people would agree with. The outcome.
Most people would agree with the outcome. It's, it is at times disheartening, especially I have been on the receiving end of some of these policy changes that would police the language that we use to describe diversity of background, perspective, and experiences. We're recording this in Toronto, so I can say diversity over here. But, if some select, clients, prospective clients, are hearing this in the United States, they might have just squirmed in their chairs when I use the D word. But it's who I am, right? It's if I can use other words. I'm a word nerd. I'm an English major. I can use the word difference. I can use the word variety. I can use the word variation. I mean, I'm happy to move and dance around people's current sensitivities right now, but ultimately that's what I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about there is a goal and everybody's striving towards it. And I
Mhm.
think that that goal ultimately is thriving. Every single person on the planet wants to thrive. Humans are humans. We've been trying to do this for at least 10,000 years. But I take solace in the fact, or rather in the sage advice of the late Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And that is sage advice that he left with us before his life was cut short. I want us to engage with that idea that this might be the last conversation we record. I don't want that to be true because we have a lot of movies we need to watch.
Yeah.
We got 3 more episodes of Andor we got to catch up on,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, let's hope it doesn't end. But if, God forbid, it were to end right now, and you had to leave some sage advice on the table for future generations, including, you know, baby A and baby B, what would it be?
Well, I think it's not fair to other guests because ours is probably we've morphed each other over the last, been together a decade. So we've morphed each other's ideas. And if I was to like culminate all of the lessons, all of the messages, all of the learnings, and this is actually not just the Western context, like all of the travels, it would be something like lead with love. And I would be clear, I'll be clear on both parts of that. Because like we said with something, defund the police, it takes a decade of thinking to get to a simple phrase. The reason why, I've already explained to you. Fortunately, you actually brought up all about love. That was very convenient because let's start with the definition of love. Is, to me, the active form of it is to contribute to someone else's or your own spiritual development. Being clear that the spiritual development includes the realization of that person. That can't happen without things like them feeling safe. It can't happen without the hierarchy of needs. It can't happen without, eating, without safety, belonging, going further into transcendence and community well-being. That can't happen. Like, the act of helping them do that is love. And that means self-love too, right? The act of helping you get those things. Like self-love and believing that you should belong in your own life. Like these things too, that you have something to contribute to a community and that you are worthy of self-actualization and that you are worthy of going beyond that to community transcendence. So that's love part of it. That's a lot. But then the lead part of it is almost like take your autonomy. Part of this human experience that you've been given is the free will thing. And the fact that we can experience the universe through our senses. Only our senses. Only our concoction of senses. A dolphin is going to experience the same oxygen a different way. And so the lead part is like leadership of self almost. Like using the same principles of vision, of guidance, of goal setting, even we were talking about, but applying it to your own life and lived experiences. Do that, live the human experience, but do it from a place of love. And I think it'll all be taken care of. Everything will be taken care of.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Wow. I have the pleasure and privilege of having similar conversations with you on a regular basis, and they usually happen, over dinner, on walks, on planes, so on and so forth. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes I think maybe Bailey's just like entertaining Hamza's wild ideas over here, but
always, why not?
No,
I'll do that forever.
And sometimes I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like,
fun.
A loving thing to do is just to, encourage this baby thinker to just keep on developing his thoughts. But the fact that like we now are aware that there's cameras here, that this is going to be syndicated, this is going to be shared with people that we respect and hold in high regard, and you are still standing on business. You are still saying the same thing that you say privately, which is lead with love. That's special to me. I mean, truly, because I engage with that idea and it feels true to me. Mm-hmm. It's intuitive. I have a personal, professional, and academic experiences and insights that support that idea. But to hear it come not just from you, we're well into pattern territory. Mm-hmm. Episode 1 of Sage Advice was Dr. Summer Zuffer, who said, make love stronger than hate.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Janani said something similar. Dr. Dina said something similar. So all these brilliant thinkers from a wide variety of disciplines, personal, professional, and academic variation that is not coordinated other than through the nexus of me.
Oh, well, that's nice too, though. What's the common denominator? Like, who do you surround yourself with? That's cool.
Right. And so maybe it's a reflection of what you said earlier. Maybe I'm acting from the place of the goal. Maybe I'm trying to move to a place of more aliveness, as Dr. Dina says, to stay in a place of love, to lead with love. And I think that I'm attracting the sort of people who are thinking about this, but are doing so in a way that is independently arrived at. I have not shaped it. I mean, you've said that I've contributed
there's a bias to this episode a little bit. We've been thinking together for a while.
But you're putting your name on it, though, and that's a pretty big deal, right? And so you said that leadership of self plays into this too. And so if you're listening to this, if you're watching this and you're like, I'm not a leader of people, that's all good, because the most raw definition of leadership appears in the Journal of Current Biology, which is the physiological, behavioral, and morphological propensity to act first. It is the desire to move in the direction based on who you are physically, how you feel on the inside, and how you've been conditioned. So this comes almost full circle for us. Move in the direction of wanting to develop another person spiritually. And if you act from the place of lead with love, if that is your lens, then you can start to look at geopolitics, for instance. You can look at your current boss, and you can start to see who's leading with love and who isn't. And I think it's pretty clear, because if you're saying that the love part of lead with love is the spiritual development, which implies, safety, vulnerability, education, belonging, self-love, investing in another person so they're self-sufficient and thriving, I think you don't have to say what's understood. I think it's very clear right now that there are a lot of leaders in positions of prominence who are not leading with love.
Yeah, I mean, they may have stopped at self-love.
I think so.
They may have stopped at a certain kind of development. I think there's like different kinds of freedom that we didn't get to. And like one of my main motivators, what am I leading towards, I guess, for myself sometimes, is like the 4 freedoms. I think this is from Strategic Coach or Dan Callahan or who, but freedom of time, money, relationships, and purpose. And I think we all want these freedoms. And for me, I said, earlier in this episode that entrepreneurship has been the way for me to realize that freedom. But yes, there's no but. Leading, like to lead with love, to act. So what is in the water that all these thinkers, that's great that all those people ended up somewhere. But even if I read like the great texts, if I read things that were from, millions years ago from Eastern promises and, Buddhist texts, and if I go over and I read the people of the books, the Abrahamic books, everyone's trying to get to the same thing. Even love is the answer. Even the artists are trying to say the same thing. So, hey, is it possible? We all arrive at this for some reason, and what is it? And like, that's what I would leave.
Fascinating.
Figure out when you arrive at it, and it's the most amazing thing. But I hope you arrive at it soon, because it makes the living experience, this video game, a lot more fun. A lot more fun.
You've actually inspired now a thought, and I just want to quickly riff with you on this. There's 3 questions here, and they're all temporally anchored. The first one is past advice, then present advice, then future advice. But the future advice is kind of rooted in the idea that this might end. Assuming this doesn't end, because now you've inspired me to hope for the best. I'm not going to expect the worst. Let me ask you this. You sent me a reel of our guy, Timothy Chalamet in Rome.
Oh, yeah.
Who's just wilding out. And I love Timmy.
Yeah, me too.
His SAG Acceptance Award speech is something that I watch on a regular basis. I'm like, wow, Tim's giving us permission to re-engage with the idea that there are things that we want in life, and we have to be unapologetic about wanting them. So I'm going to ask you a new question.
Sure.
Right? Let's think this through.
Yeah.
Nice callback to your pod.
Crossover.
Is there a sage right now, dead or alive? And two-part question. You can go to any direction. Is there a sage advice that you're finding fascinating, that you haven't fully explored, that you're like, there's something here, I want to move in that direction? Is there a person or a body of knowledge that you're like, there's something happening here, I want to move in this direction?
Yeah, but
your eyes lit up. Tell me.
It's temporally based as well.
Talk to me. This is great.
I'll tell you why. Because it's
future sage.
Well, okay, wait. Maybe I hope I understood the question correctly. But I am in a phase to me, let me tell you about my approach to sages actually first. This, I think, matters.
Sure.
Everyone's a sage.
Yes. Including Eva Bean.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone can be my sage. That is my approach to wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Synthesis.
It's important because that's the framing paradigm. It means also that he's talking about Eva, who's like my 10, 11-year-old niece. I don't even remember anymore because there's so many of them. But you wouldn't believe the conversations that we have had with our nibblings because we're able to say, to respect that perspective. It's wild when you ask them questions like, well, what would you do to solve this garbage problem? Like,
incredible.
Y'all, the possibilities that come
unburdened
from a freer, you might say, kind of mind. Hopefully, if the kid, if the kids had a good upbringing and stuff, all that's okay. So everyone can be a sage is the paradigm. Now I'm entering a phase of life over these last year, I'd say, where we are wanting to become parents.
Yes.
And so I've been not playing with, but thinking a lot about what that means, because obviously we've talked a lot. It's no surprise to anyone listening anymore that I subscribe to mind, body, spirit, cognition, that there's like the connection is you, physical, that this, is a vessel for whatever you want to call it, consciousness, soul. So I'm like, if this thing happens, creating life, and not only does all the physiology change, like everything, as you know, because sometimes I just go to Hamza and I'm like, I don't know why I'm crying. I don't know. I actually
kicking too hard.
No, not even yet. I just like, can I have a hug? Like sometimes I'm like that. So everything is changing, and then those things connect with, obviously, like probably one of the more spiritual things people do is think about children and extension and family and all this stuff. And then love comes into it. So if I understood your questions, like I'm kind of looking into sage advice from...
What's pulling you? Like, is there sage? Like, so the second question I asked was like, is there sage advice that you're wrestling with right now that feels true but hasn't settling? But I'm asking you essentially, is there sage advice or a sage that is intriguing to you, that's fascinating, that's pulling you in that direction? Where like you haven't really begun to explore it. Like, for example,
I was thinking motherhood and this concept called matrescence.
Okay, break it down.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking is I didn't attach it to one person. However, my friend did recommend a book called Matrescence, which was like maybe the writer of that book is calling me because I bought the book. And it's this concept that when women become mothers, particularly, they're saying that there's this whole shift that happens that's not really been explored in a full way, like, and because women don't know about it themselves, everything that happens with that, like psychological development, physical development, cognitive development, even like all those things we were just talking about, change you. Like, you are a different person. And so I've been thinking a lot, like, the sages, I want to find the sages with this concept of matrescence, because that's like adolescence, right? Think about adolescence, that you will go through a new stage. And if you could expect that and like, hey, what does that come with? Maybe we would have more everything, self-actualization, understanding of the human experience, which is like interesting to me. Maybe you'd have even less practical issues, maybe like postpartum depression and that stuff that comes quite common to all women.
Yeah.
Maybe you would understand loss differently, like we've talked about in the past. If there was an identity shift that's like adolescence that's expected. For example, if we were dealing with the concept of adolescence and people in that stage, we would react to them differently going through certain things. So I'm looking for sages in that area. And I am driven by maybe obvious reasons, but my curiosity's piqued.
This is that shit. This is what, I love every episode that we've done, but I actually want to go back now and ask Dr. Summer Zuffer, ask Nani, ask Dr. Dina, and then ask future guests.
I know all of them, and they would have such good thoughts about matrescence.
I know, because it's like best past advice, current advice that you're wrestling with, advice that you want to leave behind, but what is pulling you is what's missing. And you inspire that with your sage advice today. So thank you for gifting us what is going to become a component of sage advice, which is what's pulling you. And I whispered into the mic over here. I said the thing that's calling me is mushroom intelligence.
Oh, I love that part. Like
We'll have to save that for another
we'll
episode.
do a psychedelics and like mushrooms is a very interesting thing.
That's it. And I'm so glad that we could make this happen, especially right now while you just delivered a keynote. We're about to head to New York, and we got baby A and baby B in there. Their first podcast, by the way, I gotta say. So like, there's actually like 4 of us in the room, including
they
Rodrigo,
have done my
5.
podcast, but
Facts,
I was hosting.
First in studio one. I take credit for that. Bailey Parnell, thank you so much. And I say this to a lot of guests, but this hits differently because you're my partner. I love you.
I love you too.
Deeply. Friends, that was Bailey Parnell, and if you weren't already inspired by her work, I hope you now feel moved by her depth, her clarity, and her love for helping others thrive. From Brampton to boardrooms, from student mental health to ethical AI, Bailey's journey reminds us that true leadership isn't about titles or metrics. It's about care, it's about courage, it's about love. And it's about asking better questions even when the answers are still unfolding in real time, and they may continue to unfold in perpetuity. Bailey, thank you for sharing your sage advice and for being one of the brightest lights that I know. To all our listeners, may you carry her words with you and let them illuminate your next step forward. I'm Hamza Khan. This is Sage Advice, and until next time, stay hopeful.